So tonight we're doing an immersion reading with all the authors that were in this anthology, which came out last year, and we're very glad to have you here. So Vincent Ternida, he's our Asian Canadian Writers Workshop board member. He'll be the host of tonight. So why don't you take it away, and I will mute myself, Vincent.
No worries. So yes, so this is the immersion reading workshop. Reading, just author reading. It's not really a workshop unless we can improvise. We can do that. Anyway, yeah, 2018 we had a Rice Paper and Dark Helix Press had a call to submission, and what happened is after a year of waiting, we finally got the anthology where we got 15 authors submitting, and then we chose them to be part of it, myself included. And what I like about today's event is the last two readings that we had were in person, and we had one in Toronto, we had one in Vancouver. What they were like fall 2019 before COVID. Now, yeah, we can actually get people from around the world and from different coasts to be together in one big event. So a big shout out to everybody across the world watching us from the comfort of their own homes. I hope the audio is good. And a big thank you to Canadian Authors Association and the Indie Authors Day for letting us have our space. Before we begin our reading, some housekeeping items. If the audio is terrible, I can speak up, or you can adjust the sound in the audio settings control in the bottom left corner of your screen. So yeah, you can use the chat to give out your questions if you want. But I hope there will be time, since there are 4 authors, and I don't know how long the readings will be. 5 minutes, I believe, per author, or take how long you want. Don't want to stifle your your voice. Anyway, the format is simple, as I explained. I'll introduce the author, they give the reading, I ask a quick question, no pressure, and then move on to the next until we complete our roundtable. Okay. Carlo, are you in? Going once? Going twice? Well, yeah, just a fun fact before I start the readings is, according to William Pham, one of the editors, the order in which the authors are featured are based on the level of their fantasy or speculative nature of the piece. The closer to realism, the earlier they are placed. So in my short story, I really don't know if the characters are skin changers or they're just lit AF. So that places me way in the beginning. Carlo, I believe, is a lot more closer to reality than me, having killer janitors, so he was before me. So I don't think Carlos around. I was going to introduce him. So we're going to move on to. We're going to move on to. Okay, just a question. Jeannie, have you made Urania co-host
She
yet?
is co-host. Yes.
You can share your screen, right? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go down to Urania. Fung is an English professor who grew up in Texas with 1980s Hong Kong entertainment as her babysitters. Monsters and martial arts have been swimming in her head ever since. For more on what she does besides grading papers, please see Uriana Fung's blog at urianafung.blogspot.com. Take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you everybody for being willing to take a look at my reading. I'm doing this for the first time, so I hope it works well. But I have a slideshow that I wanted to share oh, whoops. That's the wrong button, sorry. Obviously not going too well already. Hold on a second, let me try again. All right, over here. And then, no, that's not what I want. Oh, great. Okay, I'm gonna have to try this again. Yeah, I did have a slide that I wanted to share. Well, I would just go ahead and read while I'm trying to figure this out then. Okay, so the name of the story is A Debate Over the Hopping Undead. And here it goes. Jiazhen was kissing his wife Luru when she pulled away from him with a frown. What's wrong? Luru opened the papered window on the second of the good with her lovely face and teal silk dress. Below, two humans reached blindly ahead with pale, moldy hands as they hopped down the street. Everyone knew that undead corpses turned too stiff to walk. They could only hop straight and not very high. One undead wore a long necklace of pearl beads. The other had no necklace. Each figure wore its hair in a frayed graying pigtail that bounced with every hop. The disintegrating yellowish squares on both the front and back of their long black robes were intact enough to mark the robes as the current uniforms of Qing dynasty bureaucrats. One of the undead headed for a building across from the hostel. Built with ancient wisdom, every door sill in town was a sturdily bolted wooden plank about 1 inch thick and half a foot tall. The undead kept hopping against the door sill. It could try all night and never hop over. Luwu drew back with a sigh. I feel sorry for them. Jiazhen loved Luru's compassionate nature, but this time it was misdirected. With a shudder, he turned away from the window and pulled off his robe of yellow linen with black I Ching hexagrams sewn into it. What are you talking about? The Jiangshi, Luru said, pointing at the hopping undead. They were buried away from home, and they're so homesick they can't rest. Didn't your father train you in the Maoshan tradition? You can guide them back home with your arts. You know it's not that simple, Jiazhen said. A corpse needed to be buried not only away from home, but also in a plot with perfectly wrong feng shui to become the type of undead corpse called jiangshi. That was why seeing one was rare, and two even rarer. But when I was growing up in Hunan, so many foreigners had died working there that it was common practice for Maoshan priests to guide jiangshi back to their homes. I can make talismans for improving businesses, health, and relationships. I don't control jiangshi. Jiazhen took off his black felt cap with its little mirror in the center for repelling evil. Tomorrow, I want to sell a few more talismans, and then we'll go to Hangzhou and have a good time at Westlake. What do you say? He had originally planned to stay in town for a few more days, but seeing the undead convinced him to move on. Westlake was famous for its beautiful stretches of lotus, peach, and plum blossoms among weeping willows. A walk around the huge lake would provide countless angles from which to appreciate the heavenly landscape. And just in case, there were stairs, zigzag bridges, and plenty of water, all of which Jiangshi couldn't cross. Luru had asked to go to Westlake before, but now she turned back to the window, her focus on the undead. Homesick for eternity, such a terrible fate. Jiazhen dropped his cap on a table, shut the papered windows, and placed his hands on Luru's shoulders. Please, my treasure, let's go to bed. We both need the sleep. After morning sunrays chased the undead back into the ground, the town came alive. People opened their shops, haggled, and led donkeys down the streets. On the first floor of the Good Luck Hostel, Luru ordered a bowl of rice porridge with chunks of yam and ribs. Jiazhen ordered 2 tea eggs. When a boy brought their order on a wooden tray, Luru asked, "Where do your jiangshi come from?" The boy crinkled his face and quickly moved their order from the tray to their table. Hangzhou. He left before Luru could ask anything else. Luru raised an eyebrow at her husband. We're planning to go there anyway. I am not guiding jiangshi, Jiazhen said, ripping off the brown cracked shell of a tea egg. Luru stirred her steaming rice porridge with a spoon. Talismans haven't brought us much money, but if people can get their deceased relatives back, they would pay much more. I've bought you everything you want. What do we need more money for? Jiazhen asked, biting into his egg. Lulu leaned so close to him that he could feel her breath on his ear. I'm pregnant. Jiazhen swallowed. You mean you're having a baby? Lulu rolled her eyes. No, I'm having a piglet. Jiazhen threw his head back and laughed, not caring that other customers were staring at him. He was going to be a father. He saw himself following in the footsteps of his heroic ancestors, mortals keeping the arts immortal, as he trained his child in the Maoshan secrets that had been proudly passed down his family line. But he had lost his mother to disease and his father to jiangshi. He could easily lose this child to anything. His mind raced as he thought of all the precautions he wanted to take. He would indeed need more money. Okay, I think that's probably all the time we have, 5 minutes, right? Is that good? Wait, how do I get back?
Sorry, there we
Sure.
go.
Okay, there we go.
We good. Okay. One thing that I liked about your piece when I reread it again was there's this juxtaposition with the foreigner Jiangxia and Luru's desire to relocate to Westlake, and I like that theme. How like there's that outsider point of view wanting to get out. So my question is, when writing, do you think of the theme first, or do you think of the subject matter of your piece?
The subject matter, because what happened was I was vacationing with some friends over in China back in 2018, way before the pandemic. Uh, and we saw dorsal after dorsal after dorsal, and I kept thinking, why are these trip bars that are keeping me from getting into seeing what I want to see? And my friends had said, oh, that's for keeping out zombies. And I was like, okay, that's a story, that was basically the inspiration right there. Later on, I looked up and discovered actually it's for keeping out floodwaters or feng shui reasons. And I was like, really? And then I found that little movie clip, and I was like, yeah, it still keeps out zombies. It's good.
Yeah, my introduction to Jiangxia was Raymond Wong's movies in the 80s, like Chinese ghost stories and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty cool that you chose hopping zombies. The other time I saw someone write about this, like a friend of mine wrote a screenplay about hopping zombies and kung fu and put them all together. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
So Lillian, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
All right, so
Thank you for having me.
oh, thank you for joining us. So Lillian Liu, she, her, is the author of Heirlooms, a short story in immersion. Her academic work can be found in The Rambling, Whiter Asian American Women on Skin Color and Colorism, and 18th Century Fiction. She is an English PhD candidate at UCLA, where she studies British Romanticism, gender, and the novel. Take it away.
Thank you. Am I able to share my screen just so that I can share the document as I'm reading it?
No worries. Jeannie, can you make her co-host? You see the button? Perfect.
Ah, yay, thank you so much.
There we go.
Okay. Let's see. Doo-doo. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yeah.
I just want to have this here for accessibility purposes, just in case you want to read along and can't hear me well. Okay, so heirlooms. I wake with smoke in my lungs, warmth coming from within and without. The old couple is awake and they're fighting their one-sided fight again. The man, Wei, sits in the middle of the kitchen, inhaling a cigarette and exhaling loud words in their language that I've come to understand. It is the language they only half used with their children, but the children have left now, leaving the old woman with only these walls of smoke for a shield. It's a waste of money, he murmurs. She has turned away from him, stirring his soup. The steam clouds her glasses, and I cannot see her eyes. And how are you going to do it by yourself? The house is fine as it is. I startle, my bones creaking. I find it funny that he speaks for me. It's a waste of money, he repeats. She closes the coffee maker and circles around to the sink. I can see her better here near the window. She spends many hours here during the day, the sounds of the birds outside or the words of the old man accompanying her. I cannot tell if she listens to either of them attentively. She is tired, even though she has had her 2 cups of coffee already and breathes, I will use my own money. He is silent after that. Upstairs, in what was once the eldest daughter's childhood bedroom, she has started painting the east wall pink. She has stripped it of its blue wallpaper that they'd kept from the previous people, who'd in turn kept it from their predecessors. It has always been young girls living in that room. That afternoon, she presses the paint roller against the walls with extra strength. I don't mind. It is the kind of touch that reminds me I am still here. A little girl and her mother arrive a week later before the smoke fills the kitchen. The mother looks familiar. The old woman calls her Ayin, and I realize that it's her eldest daughter. The top of her head has streaks of white and her forehead has some lines, but I have my own creaks and cracks too, and I am proud of my sway. She still moves in the same manner, with her left foot stepping always more heavily than her right. The little girl is Ayin's daughter. Carrie tiptoes everywhere, and my bones feel grateful. Perhaps with them there, I can cough away the dust from the basement. Perhaps I can tell her my secrets, tales even Ayin can't remember. The old woman brings her daughter and granddaughter up the stairs into the pink bedroom. Each woman of each generation is 2 steps away from the other. This is their way. The family before them would embrace and hurtle towards each other with rapid footsteps. The old woman and Ayin have always been quiet, cautious. Even when they touch each other, it is just a hand on the shoulder. In the pink bedroom, the old woman opens the closet and hands Ayin 3 plastic bags. These plastic bags have been in the closet for the past half year. She opens them in front of Ayin. They are full of jewelry and makeup. The smells waft the air. She hands her granddaughter an old suitcase. Thank you, Papa, Carrie says, perplexed by the old carpet bag with plastic flowers on it. I haven't noticed that carpet bag in 25 years. The old woman opens the carpet bag for Carrie, and in it are piles of little girls' dresses, all very frilly. Ayin clicks her tongue, the way her father does in the mornings, as a greeting to the old woman. I freeze. The air halts. Only the dust from the carpet bag swirls up like smoke. Mom, you shouldn't use your money on all these gifts. How about doing something for yourself? We are fine, Ayin says, putting a hand on her mother's thin shoulder. The old woman simply presses the carpet bag more firmly into Carrie's arms. In English, she says, Do you like? The little girl smiles. Pink is my favorite color. I know, the old woman says. The young girl stays for the entire summer. I wake in the mornings to the birds singing and lightened footsteps in my pulse. Even Way's plodding softens. The only smoke inside is from the soup that the old woman makes. She lets Carrie try a little bit of coffee each morning before her husband comes downstairs. You won't tell Mama? The old woman asks. Her glasses inch up her nose as she smiles. Carrie giggles and shakes her head. Their secrets build. In August, when Way is at work on the weekends, they go on a TV marathon. When Way's old car rumbles up the driveway, shaking the screen door, the old woman brings their dishes to the kitchen, and Carrie turns off the TV, turning back to her books. In those stolen daylight hours, the old woman and Carrie take turns picking one show every half hour. They do this for hours, almost forgetting about lunch. With sandwiches in hand one day, Carrie asks, Papa, why don't you go to work? Her grandmother thinks for a moment before saying, I used to, but then the factory machine fell on my foot. It still hurts to walk. I now understand why she still grips the railing so hard each morning as she comes down the stairs. Maybe when you get better? Carrie asks, sitting on the floor and tapping her feet together. Her grandmother speaks so gently I can barely hear her. Maybe. The breeze comes in through the open window. The little girl's pink skirt ruffles like one of her grandmother's purple pansy petals. Can we go see a movie in the theater? The little girl says. Carrie can't see it, but I can. Her grandmother's brow twitches imperceptibly, a small crack in her facade. Maybe next time, she says. She reaches out to touch Carrie's hair. She doesn't do this often. Later, as she is washing dishes and Carrie is writing in her summer diary, the old woman pauses. She turns off the faucet and goes to a drawer next to the spices. She opens it and I look away. She has secrets that only I know, but she too needs privacy. I know that behind the knives and sauces, she keeps an old pouch of money. I know because when the garbage truck goes by every Monday morning, the drawer shudders and rattles the coins and shuffles the notes around. She sighs and returns to the dishes, scrubbing harder than before. I hear Ayin's footsteps before I feel them. She comes to pick up her daughter. School will begin in another week, she reminds Carrie. Once Wei has said his quick goodbyes and retreats in the kitchen, the old woman whisks Ayin and Carrie up the stairs. Not again, Mom, Ayin whines. She sounds 2, not 32. But yes, again. The old woman opens the closet and shoves something into Ayin's hands. It is a jade necklace. Then she hands Carrie a red envelope. Carrie knows enough not to open it in front of the giver. But somehow she knows, like I do, that this is all the old woman has left. Ayin protests. Mom, I did not spend money on the necklace, the woman says in her language. It was given to me by my mother before I left for America, and now it is yours, for your journey. But the hongbao, Ayin says, gesturing to the red envelope in her daughter's hands. We cannot take your money. She puts it back in her mother's hands. Please take it back and take care of yourself. Why do you keep doing this? I cannot see the old woman's eyes. Her head is turned towards the ground, the light glinting off her glasses. Why does she keep doing this? I feel smoke again. Wei has lit his cigarette. He is on the stool in the kitchen downstairs. The smoke has not reached this room yet. Carrie looks at the walls. They are her favorite shade of pink. She steps towards her grandmother, and the floorboard beneath the old woman creaks with more weight than usual. Their hands touch, and Carrie moves slowly, her feet between her grandmother's, her arms around her grandmother's waist. Her grandmother stops, then leans into the embrace, her hands on top of the girl's head, the red envelope shaking in her fingers. bent like old woman beams. Ayin is not privy to the secret that has been shared silently between her daughter and her mother, but she steps forward too and puts her hand on top of her mother's, on top of Carrie's head. I turn away because this is a language that is not mine. It is a language that is not Wei's either. I do not need to look to feel a ray of sunlight cutting through the room, softened by the dust swimming inside. A cloud passes, and the sunlight inhales, grows, fills the room, no doubt changing the rose colors of the walls to gold. It is fleeting, but warms them still. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick question, and it's going to sound really stupid. The I in the story is the house, right?
Yes, it is the house speaking.
Oh, I got it right. Yes, so I really enjoyed the fact that it's 3 different generations from the point of view of the house. And every like haunted house story, nobody asks the opinion of the house. It's like the ghost, the people invading the house. It's like the people complaining in the house, but never about the house. So like
Yeah.
thank you for that unique perspective. So at what point in your writing did you make that creative choice?
Yeah, so I kept thinking, well, one of my people here who know me know that I'm obsessed with the Gothic, and I think a lot about domestic spaces and people's relationships to domestic spaces. I wrote this in the spring of 2017 when, there were lots of discussions in the US about women's rights and, the Me Too movement, and I started graduate school that year too. And I kept thinking about communities, like queer communities that have gone underrepresented by like this is patriarchy, and identities that don't seem representable or worthy of being represented in narrative. And we get a lot of Gothic tales told from like the woman's point of view or even from the man's point of view, and then you realize there's an unreliable narrator. But I just kept thinking of like connections and relationships that we don't hear much about. And so I think I wanted to tell an intergenerational, like Chinese American story, which has been done before and beautifully. But I think there's such a like tactile connection and memory oriented connection to spaces and homes that I want to see more of. And I kind of, yeah, I like that you said that, because it's not a ghost story, but the people in it are haunted. And the house itself is haunted by the memories it carries.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
So is Anais or Anais?
Hi, it's Anais.
Anais, okay. So I'm gonna read your bio. Anais. Okay, what was that? So Anais J is a Filipino entrepreneur who reads and writes fiction to keep her sanity. When she was a little girl, she wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, and a soldier. And fortunately, she can be all those and more by being a writer. Her short stories have been published in Toasted Cheese Literary Journal, the Vignette Review, and in Curtis Boss's anthology, Second Taste. She currently has a post-apocalyptic short story forthcoming in Philippine Speculative Fiction Volume 12. Get more doses of strange fiction from her Facebook page at Anais J's Writes and her IG Instagram at AnaisJ_writes. Take it away.
Hi, so I won't be sharing my screen. I'm pretty old-fashioned. I printed my copy because I had to mark it. But anyway, this is my story, This Other Water. And I'm sorry, I hope you don't hear my dog. She just woke up. So, another filtration process has been added, level 5. Whenever news like this reaches our home, we don't think about what's good for our health. We think about our bank accounts. We review ATM receipts to confirm what's left of our savings. How many gallons of level 5 water can we afford? And what revisions in our consumption plan do I have to make this time? I turn off the television and go to our garden. The trees that line our fence provide a canopy of leaves that shield us from the sun. Kella lies on the ground, dappled with a few spots of light. She breathes steadily, but even in her sleep, she clutches the grass. Sometimes I wonder if she never ceases to hear the water beneath the earth, gurgling, calling to her, begging her to be its savior. But what can one mermaid do? She opens her eyes. I hand her a bottle of water. She drinks it and immediately looks refreshed. One of the first things I learned when I took her to land is that she needs to consume 5 times more water than the average male human. I started her on 13.5 liters, but the moisture in her eyes dried, and she suffered from chronic fatigue, compelling me to compute a new amount based on my BMI instead. On summer days like this, we add 2 more liters to her minimum of 18 for caution. Her fluid intake, unfortunately, doesn't cancel her intolerance to direct sunlight. 3 minutes maximum is her limit, or else she shrivels like a leaf. I joked once that she must be part vampire, and she retorted that even vampires, were they even real, would be disgusted by the taste of this generation's blood. You do not know what untainted water tastes like, she would say. It is magic on your tongue. I watched her sit up and wipe a tear from her eye, 5 more gulps of water to replace it. Another dream from your mother's? I ask. I dreamt of her childhood. I can't choose which of her memories or those before her play in my sleep. It is the curse of being their last daughter. She folds her legs inward and picks at her toenail. It's a bad habit of hers whenever in human form, pulling and twisting cracked nails as though unable to accept this part of her anatomy. I relive their lives in my sleep, and it's wearing me out. Imagine thousands of lives stored in your brain because there's no one else left to bear them. I would go crazy. I just might. She wipes another tear. Sometimes, I wonder what's the point of surviving. I brush the hair from her face. She is cold, and this assures me that she is healthy. Hope for the day you can return to the water and replenish it with your kind. Are we any closer? It hurts me to shake my head, but she knows when I lie, and she says that hurts her more. They need to filter the water 5 times now. That's another 100 pesos per gallon of drink, another 50 pesos for other needs. She looks at me solemnly. Keeping me alive might just kill the 2 of us. I laugh. The creases beside my mouth form and the skin around my eyes crinkles. She fears I'll die by water contamination. I fear I'll grow old without sending her back to the sea. Don't run, don't walk. Stay seated as much as possible to avoid breaking a sweat. Most Filipinos consume fruits and vegetables 3 meals a day. They're a source of water and are therefore valuable. Many grow them in their gardens, and most petty crimes are produced theft, trespassing, stealing, and, when confrontation happens, sometimes murder. People shower in the rain. When thunder roars, people stop whatever it is they're doing. Typing, talking to customers, playing computer games, arguing with peers. Even the Holy Mass is interrupted. They go outside and tip their heads back to catch a glimpse of lightning. They tick the seconds off until they hear thunder. The fewer the seconds, the closer the thunderstorm is in miles. When a raindrop collides with a human, he or she howls, and then everybody knows. People crowd the streets. They raise their arms and open their mouths. Later, they swallow 2 packets of salts to prevent poisoning. There are all kinds of salts now. Some call them little crystals of hope. Those who can't afford properly filtered water buy them to treat their supply. I use treated water for our vegetable and fruit garden, but I don't take a risk with Kala. The one time we tried it, she turned green. The veins in her arms bulged, and she couldn't breathe. I poured all our level 4 water into the tub and let her remain under for days to ensure her good health. She doesn't know that I sometimes drink water treated with salts whenever our filtered supply runs low for her baths. I don't mind. I've determined long ago that her survival is paramount to mine. Humanity has robbed too many creatures of their lives and natural habitat at the peak of our water crisis. If all the good I can do is to save her, I will pursue it at any cost. I repeat this to myself the next morning as I kiss her goodbye. It prepares my mind for whatever I will have to sacrifice at the onset of level 5, because while I do my best for her, what do I really know about mermaids? Even Kella cannot dictate the do's and don'ts of her survival when none of her ancestors have lived more than a couple of days on land. She squeezes my arm absently before I am out of reach. Soon after letting go, the subtle tapping of keys on her laptop resumes. I look back over my shoulder and appreciate the sight of her hunched over a desk cluttered with open dictionaries. The translation work comes easily to her. Memories of our mothers come with the benefit of remembering the many different languages they learned from years of travel around the world. The heat outside makes me wince. I shield myself with an umbrella and pace to the village gate, where I pay a tricycle to take me to the bus terminal. The bus ride to the aquarium takes 3 hours because of the traffic in Estex and EDSA. This year's the worst, according to the news. People buy cars for the necessity of air conditioning. Jeepneys and non-air-conditioned buses that used to accommodate numbers beyond their capacity can't cut it anymore. People can't afford to sweat. Only those incapable of buying even the cheapest model keep public transport running. Kella and I almost bought a car, but ultimately we refused to contribute to the already alarming levels of air pollution. We can't drink, can't breathe. Soon, we won't be able to live. That's it.
Where in Manila are they residing?
My hometown is in Laguna, so I imagine they were in
Okay.
Laguna. So there's
Yeah.
Aztec Sinedza.
Oh, that's fine. Like if they lived in Parañaque, they're fucked. Like they're dead. There's no
Yeah.
water in Parañaque. Yeah, like
That's true.
this story really resonated with me more than just the place and how it is subverting the sirena genre, and also adding like bits of science fiction in there. I really appreciated it. How much combination you made to make the story feel so new, but the thematic of like forcing that romantic relationship, even like he's projecting so much and spending so much of his own resources. I find that you can see right away that it's a doomed relationship between a mermaid and the sad boy, right? So like I don't know where I'm going with this, but where did you get the idea of like taking that Sirena story and subverting it to this story that you've submitted?
So I think a couple of years ago, I saw, artists, writers, we like Pinterest, where we find artworks to inspire us, and I do daily prompts. So one day I saw a painting about mermaids, and ever since it just intrigued me. Some things make so much impression on writers that they haunt you until finally one day, when I saw the call for submission for Immersion, I knew I was going to write about mermaids. And another thing that contributed to that was that during the time that I was struggling to find a plot that would maybe satisfy the editor so they would accept my story, I saw a documentary about how clean water was still inaccessible to a lot of people around the globe. And I just thought, what if this happened on a global scale, and people, especially in the Philippines, when you live in a tropical country, it's difficult to last without water for 5 minutes. It's so hot here. So putting the mythology of the sirena, which is the Tagalog word for mermaids, for those who don't know, and adding that to a man, basically an embodiment of people who want to try to save others who are a victim of humanity's efforts to modernize everything and in the process pollute the water. Everybody's suffering, but Kella is like the voice of the creatures who would suffer, who do not have a chance to fight for this. And I just thought it would be nice to put them all in a story and just get a glimpse, give readers a glimpse of a time in their lives when they would have this big turnaround. Because if for those who have read the story, they would know that something happens to Kella and the relationship would have to move forward.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Like I really enjoyed the entire that how precious water is, and for us here to live in especially Vancouver where water is abundant, like we take it for granted. And I was in Davao back in 2018. I was living with a friend, and we were sharing like a big drum for like a 3-story apartment building. It's just like I'd like to like impart that experience to people who like take water so for granted. And thanks for sharing that story. It's very beautiful.
Thank you also.
Okay, the next author will be Lily Chang. Lily Chang is a writer, editor, and filmmaker based in Montreal, Quebec. She is a graduate of Concordia University's MA program in creative writing. Her work has been published by Frog Hollow Press, Headlight Anthology, Hearst Try, and Dark Helix Press. She is a finalist for the 2018 CBC Nonfiction Prize and Speculative Literature Foundation 2018 Diverse Writers Grant. She is currently at work on a magic realist play set in Taiwan, supported by a Canada Council of 40 Arts grant. Take it away, Lily.
Thank you, Vincent. Thanks for being here, everyone. And thanks to ACWW and our editors for organizing this event, and Vincent for hosting. I'm going to read for you the last couple pages of my story. In the story, the first-person narrator sees her life as a subsidiary alternate timeline of the life of the protagonist, Livia. Livia has grown up in North America as an immigrant, while the narrator, an alternate version of the same person, has stayed in Taiwan. The passage I'm reading entails a perspectival shift where it becomes unclear which life is a speculation and which is real. When Livia left Taiwan, flying for the first time, she saw the island through the airplane window. Minuscule, mildewed, with billows of gray hiding any sign of life. It was malleable between her fingers. She could flatten it, pocket it, and unshrink it later. In the first few days of arrival, she felt my constant grasps at her edges. A lag, a doubling, back on the island. She might have heard my screams in her sleep. She would wake up, feeling heavy. I was becoming light as paper. She would slide down the staircase banister. Her weight rushed her to the bottom. In her parents' new North American house, the space between the carpet and the ceiling on the first floor was wide enough for 2 stories. Every day, she practiced her swordplay upside down, leaping over chandeliers. Her powers surpassed Cousin Charlie's in a week. Her mother, who now sneaked cigarettes in the basement, the backyard, and against the garage, cooked and cleaned below her, undisturbed. After a month, it snowed. The foreign substance was beautiful, enchanting. It scaled windows, enlivened her with freezing spells. It was soft like shaved ice, hard like marble. She spent hours in the whiteness. The island remained flattened in her pocket. Snow can fall on Jade Mountain in the winter. On a field trip during middle school, I touched some on a rock. It was March. The snow was unexpected. My classmates and I formed a line to take pictures of the generously peppered boulder. In my hands, the snow became lukewarm. The air, however, tasted pure, untouched. We climbed until the smog was at our feet. The air jolted my lungs, my senses grounded. For a few moments, looking down at the island, I could be hopeful. Eventually, we headed back down. I wake up as the bus gets off the freeway. The mountains are timelines away. Taipei is close. Like clockwork, my eyes search for the building with the broken neon sign on the roof. I'm looking for a man seconds before he dives and bursts against the concrete, before his sinews become kaleidoscopic in a flash of cameras. I never find him. When we ran from our classmates that day in the park, we saw ourselves perched at the edge of the roof. Every step away from our classmates was one step closer to falling. I looked back. Livia did not. My heartbeat half stumbled, shuffling a step behind a strange, separate heartbeat. Our classmates did not want to spar. The girls leaned against the trees, swaying in their silken robes. They all wanted to be the Weaver Girl, but some had to settle for Lady Nanjiang, Zhuing Tai, and Little Teal. The boys jabbed at worms in the soil until Weaver Girl assigned them each a character. Qi Liang, his bones mortared in the Great Wall, was to be mourned by Lady Nanjiang. Liang Shanbo had to open his grave and catch Zhuing Tai in his arms before both re-emerged as butterflies. The cowherd and the Weaver Girl were to share a kiss on a bridge of magpies over the Milky Way. And because there were more girls than boys, Madame Whitesnake and Little Teal could take turns, falling in love with Xu Shang under his umbrella. The park was silent as sameness fenced us within its woods. Why aren't you kissing him, Livia? She wants to kiss Little Teal, have sex with her, make babies with her. The man on the roof was an actor. He had rumors to deflect. Paparazzi dragged him onto the roof before unblinking, hungering eyes. Smoked a confession out with a proverb, brave enough to do it, not brave enough to own it. The reward for bravery was a splitting of his head against the concrete, as the whole country watched. In Taiwan, no one is more generous than news stations, who repeat their stories every hour. For a while, we thought we saw a man on the roof of every building we came across. What did the ground look like from where he was standing? Could he see people, minuscule, teeming, clambering over one another? Feel the smog push against his back? Was he weightless? Or was his life, out of all possibilities, the only sacred one? Eventually, he headed back down. Our grandmother turned off the TV whenever the news came on. When we visited her in Jingshan, she made us read folk tales to her. She never learned to read. Every tale was proof that all men were cheating, lying bastards resembling her grandfather. He forced her into marriage. She refused to let him touch her for 30 years, a powerful, unteachable spell. He died alone in a separate bedroom. We listened, our eyes wide. Her laughter, rough and cool, grew to the corners of the room, penetrating walls, flattening all other noise. It extended to Livia that day when we ran from our classmates. I could not hear it. Livia, warm and tired, sits inside. Her eyes remain fixed on the backyard through the window. The baby is trying to kick its way out. Her wife, home from work, makes her another shake in the kitchen. The roar of the blender is folded within the walls. It sounds timelines away. Maybe Livia is on the bus to Taipei, nearing the park. Maybe Livia gets off at the right stop, fixes her skirt, and walks toward the white walls and blue shingles. I am in the 3-story house with the empty bedrooms. The beautiful staircase does not creak. The lush carpeting dulls any sign of life. As is often the last few months, I stare at the brightness, the sunlit grass, the unmoving skies, the fence in the distance. They stare back at me. At the airport, before flying for the first time, I looked at the faces of those who were leaving behind. I saw my nose in Cousin Charlie's red, sniffly one. My mouth, multiplied on my aunt's, said silent goodbyes. My eyes, reflecting my grandmother's, tried to memorize the path of her wrinkles. Sometimes I see her in the backyard. Her spine is curved. Her knees are swollen. She can hardly walk. Sometimes I see Cousin Charlie in the shrubs. He dawdles. Instead of hurtling into a truck on his moped, he flicks the grass with a shoehorn. Sometimes I see all of them, echoes of myself, instead of the alienating brightness. At the wedding reception, my in-laws decorated the hall with chopsticks. They meant well, my wife assured me. I asked if forks had a special place in their hearts. She stuffed cake into my mouth. The guests wanted to know where I was from originally, if I wore the pants in the relationship, if all other Orientals were lactose intolerant like me. Why don't you have an accent? They wanted to hear the myths. How my father transformed me into an English-speaking parrot to impress his immigrant friends. How I learned to be a banana at school. How I lost the ability to change myself back. Before the reception was over, the guests begged me to transform their names into logograms. This is the Chinese name for Jacqueline. The first character means horse, the second strength, the third tranquility. The guests wore my lies as if they were blessings. When the magic came to a close, they trashed the blessings on their way out, returning to sameness. A month before I graduated from university, my father threw out all my English books. I had contracted difference from reading. It made me forget my Chinese, talk back to the patriarch, and desecrate my flesh with ink as if I owned my body. It made me feverish for women. He tossed them all, wishing for an alternate path, an alternate me. I moved out of his North American 3-story house, walked myself down the aisle.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
I really love the disembodied narration throughout the whole thing. It's totally, it feels like a prose poetry. And one thing that I was like wondering, like, was it ever told from the other Livia's point of view, and then did it just progress into this slipstream type of narrative, or has it always been this type of narrative when you were envisioning this piece?
Oh, so when I was writing it?
Yeah.
It actually was linear when it first started out, and the narrative broke into 2 columns of separate narratives so that you could read 2 timelines simultaneously. But while that was fun, I felt like it didn't get to the core of what I wanted to express, and I didn't like how they were separated at the end. I wanted to show that they were haunting each other, and that I thought it was more interesting to show that it wasn't exactly clear which narrative was the real one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, because I love how all the conflict is in the subtext and how it's all subdued. You really make the audience work, and I appreciate that. Like, it's not handed to us like right away, and yeah, it's a beautiful piece. Like, I could say that for everybody. I love this anthology collection so much. And hi, Carlo. Thanks for joining us. So our last reader today is Carlo Javier. Let me read his bio. Carlo Javier is a writer based in Coquitlam, Canada. His work has appeared in the Capilano Courier, Vancouver Magazine, Western Living Magazine, and PhilippineCanadianNews.com. His first short story, Janitors, was published in 2019 as part of Immersion. He's a graduate of Capilano University School of Communications, as well as Lighthouse Labs Web Development Bootcamp. Carlo is a technical writer by trade. Take it away.
Yeah, sorry for being late.
That's totally our fault.
So yeah, I'm going to be reading part of the story Janitors, which was published on Immersions. I do want to acknowledge that this story and the story is written and exists on the unceded territories of the Lilloit, Musqueam, Sechelt, Squamish, Coquitlam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. A little context on the story: it's about a group of janitors who work in Vancouver, but they also work for an underground crime society. So I'm going to be starting from the middle here. I had a number of underground job offers when I graduated from Simon Fraser University. A cousin at the Shangri-La said she could get me in the hotel as an information broker. But I wasn't really stoked on the idea of collecting personal information and selling them to the highest bidders of the underground. An old friend from high school aggressively tried to recruit me to spy for the Jehovah's Witnesses, but I'm not the most personable guy, and knocking on people's houses and smiling for the entirety of a 5-minute conversation about God made me uncomfortable. I did always know that the underground would field some possible opportunities for me, since I ticked off some of the boxes they liked. I was born in the Philippines, grew up and studied in Canada, and was fluent in English and Tagalog. But my education also got me thinking about the other side. I kind of wanted to work in an office, maybe in the government, where I could secure great benefits and a sustainable pension plan. It was Steve who finally succeeded in bringing me under. I met him about 8 years ago when he first moved to Canada. We both part-timed at McDonald's and ended up playing in the same rec basketball league. Steve has always been great to me, probably because I helped him with English throughout his first year. He had built his own network when he got me in the janitorial agency. He knew Filipino underground spies at McDonald's, churches, chickens, and winners. He knew information brokers at hotels and smugglers who worked at the airport and in cruise ships. He told me it was easy to remain anonymous as a janitor at the mall, and that at least 60% of the janitors in the greater Vancouver area are Filipino. I could blend into the background of schools, universities, hospitals, malls, and other private and publicly owned establishments. If Steve's estimate was right, that at least half of those Filipino janitors are also cleaners for the underground. Those who used to be doctors and nurses in the Philippines have found some financial success and professional satisfaction as medical agents. He even argued that if all the Filipinos working in the Canadian and American service industries were to take a day or two off, the underground would implode. I never voiced my disbelief. Crime is crime. It was gonna happen no matter what. If people somehow stopped killing each other, we would either find a way to do something else or the government would define new crimes. Not everyone in the business, though. Religion plays a heavy role in people's philosophies, and since we're essentially enabling murder after murder on a weekly basis, many Catholics tend to shy away from the underground. Hey, more shifts for us. Joy was done stitching by the time we got back, and Lorna had almost completely cleaned off all the blood on the floor. Wow, you guys are already almost done? Steve said. Well, you'll be carrying the body down, so it's all fair, Lorna responded. We placed the dead body on our makeshift gurney. Even though the gym feels like a lifetime ago, I took pride in still executing proper lifting from the ground up. Or it was probably just the years of lifting milk and cream crates at McDonald's. As expected, the body couldn't fit horizontally into the elevator, so Steve and I had to hold him upright just to get down. When we hit the maintenance lobby, Alvin was already waiting by the exit doors. Thanks, Kuya, Steve said. Hey, Steve, we're both 30, you know? Alvin replied as he held the door open for us. We'd already lined the compartment space of our getaway van with layers of extra durable packaging plastic. All we had to do now was to wrap the body of a couple of times. Lorna would drive it down to the Coquitlam transfer station where her friend handled the disposal. Wrapping a dead body with packaging plastic wasn't easy, and I accidentally sunk my left index and middle fingers deep into one of the dead man's stitches. Blood and other disgusting fluids dripped down from my hand. Steve laughed at me for a second and then got mad at me for not having gloves. There were no faucets nearby, so I used a towel, and we kept unwrapping until the man looked like a mummy wrapped in packaging plastic. We got back to the apartment around 2 o'clock to help with the last bit of cleanup. Jobs at homes are much easier because everyone's got bathrooms and you'd expect to find some basic cleaning tools. It's different when we had a job at some empty garage a couple of months back. It was cold, dark, and the only water supply was an outdoor faucet. I rubbed my hands intensely with the dead man's pomegranate-scented hand soap, but the blood stains were resistant. The soap was nice, but Lorna wouldn't let me take anything. Before we left, Lorna placed an inconspicuous air freshener in the dead man's home. It was Sampaguita scented and slowly replaced the stench of death. Thank you.
Thank you. So my question to you, Carlo, you could have easily written about this Henry character, this multifaceted, multiracial hitman who has a more exciting life than Steve and his buddy. But like I really appreciate that you subverted the genre. But what got you to actually make this creative decision?
The start of the story, like the genesis of the story came from kind of like an idea of fear. I was unemployed for quite a while after university, but I always kind of knew that I could always work as a janitor somewhere. So, and I wanted to write it from a place without experience, as opposed to coming out with experience, which is the opposite. Because after university, I felt like I had a lot of experience, I had a lot of, things to kind of present, in a workplace. Obviously, they didn't feel that way, but so I thought that if I could write it from a place coming without the experience and without the knowledge of whatever I'm getting into, it would be more interesting for me personally. So.
Awesome. So we're just about out of time. So sorry if you have any questions, but like I'll just wrap it up with one last question. So this is addressed to all the authors. Now that we're near the end of this year, this year, what are your immediate plans as writers coming into 2021, the year of hope? I'm being very optimistic here.
Well, hoping to finish up a novel I'm working on. I think I'll have plenty of time since there's not much of anywhere to go.
Yeah, probably the same thing for me. Just to continue writing short story, a newer short story that I've been working on, probably a different genre, and also an essay that I've been working on for a while. So I have to finish that soon.
Cool.
I have to finish my dissertation, or continue it rather, and I just found out yesterday that I was chosen for Pitch Wars for my YA manuscript, so I'm really excited about that.
Woo!
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So for me, it's just focusing more on writing and creating more and sending out the works that I already finished. So hopefully that I won't be as scared as I am this year to have other people read my work, because for writers, it really is a terrifying thing.
Totally agree.
Lily? For me, I'm working on my play. I'm hoping to travel to Taiwan to do research, but with COVID, I guess we'll see. Yeah, I'm interviewing seniors about Buddhist beliefs for my play. Yeah.
Awesome. And I wish everyone the best in this chat room for 2021. Stay safe, stay healthy. Don't go out unless you have to. Don't gather in large places and all that stuff. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Thank you to the authors. Thank you for everybody for sharing. And please, yeah,
next event, talk about the next event.
Yeah, that other event. So if you have any you have no plans for the next hour, we're gonna join another event where Jeannie flips the tables and interviews me. Okay.
Yeah, so Vincent will be doing reading, and we'll be talking a bit about publishing and writing. So I'm sure he'll be entertaining. So.
No, I'm a boring guy.
All right. Okay.
I swear a lot too, but I can't do that. So.
Yeah, we're recording. Don't do that. All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Nice meeting y'all.